Team Zug is proudly to represent Zug's Past, written by Team Zug for my 6-year anniversary on YouTube. Dear friends, I'm sure you're all aware of my favorite character called Zug, and although he's a bit of a troublemaker in the actual show, we don't know much about his past. This story is to show Zug's true origins and how he may have more than what's... We're going to see there's more to this wonderful little switcher. The author. If you all are aware, Captain Zero, the leader of the Z-Stacks, has once tugboats beginning with letter Z in their name for his tugboat company. Now we all know about Zoran, Zebedee, Zach, Zug, and Zip, but there are 3 others. Zane, an ocean-going tug who actually almost died, but he somehow survives, and 2 others. One is a German little switcher from Germany named Zundaf, and a harbour tug from Russia called Zil, but they're not really part of the story. This is Zug's story we'll be talking about. But recently, Zug had been quiet. No one knows why he is that sad. When Zoran tried to ask him, he just says, "I'm fine, Zoran," and just puffed away. At this point, everyone just ignored it, except for Zip, Zug's best mate. One day, he even told this to Sunshine and 10 Cents, who it's quite weird because Z-Stacks don't really tell Star Tugs about their situations. "I'm worried for Zug," said Zip to 10 Cents and Sunshine. "Why? What's up?" asked Sunshine. "You see, Zug's been sad lately. He's depressed. Haven't bothered to talk in a long time. I'm really worried for him," said Zip. Maybe we should all ask him," said 10 Cents. "I tried that," said Zip, "but he just didn't want to say anything." "We must do something," said Sunshine. "I'm sure Zug will eventually tell us." So the plan was that 10 Cents and Sunshine will tell the other Star Tugs, Big Mac, Warrior, Top Hat, OJ, Hercules, Grampus, the submarine, Ruby, and the first ever female Star Tug, Sea Roach, Old Man, who's Sea Roach's uncle, and Boomer, who recently joined the Star Tugs. And Zip told the other Z-Stacks, Zoran, Zebedee, Zach, Zundaf, and Zil. Not Zane. Zane was away doing business for Captain Zero. So, that evening, Zug was heading back to the Z-Stack dock when he was surprised to see all the stars and all the Z-Stacks, minus Zane, were waiting for him. "What's this?" said Zug. "We're really worried about you, Zug," said Zip. "Hey," said Sunshine, "we just want to help you." "I'm fine," said Zug, who was concerned. "Spit it out, you dummy," said Zoran. "Yeah," said Zach. Let's just spit it out so we can get this over with." Zundaf, the number 7, looked at Zug. Now, we must let him take his time. If Zug doesn't want to confess, "Fine, I'll tell you. But you don't understand. It's about my past." "What?" said Zebedee. About your old harbour in Heeland." "Oh no, not this again," said Zach. "What's Heeland Harbour?" asked Big Mac. "Zug's old harbour. He used to work in a harbour fleet called the Flake Fleet by a captain named Captain Flake. He used to be on the Flake Fleet in a harbour in Heeland." "What's Heeland?" asked Warrior. "Heeland is far away from Big City Port, although close by as well," said Grampus. "That's very interesting," said Top Hat. "I got a letter from one of my old friends," said Zug, and everyone was surprised. "Wait, you had friends?" said Zoran. "How I didn't know about this?" "You never asked," said Zug. "When I first arrived, all you and Zach and Zebedee just gave me the cold look. Although Zach did take me under his wing. Zach thought, the good old days. You were like a son, me boy. Until you met Zip. Who is this tugboat that write you a letter? Said 10 cents. Her name is Cassie, said Zug. She was one of my close friends back home. Well then, can you please tell us? Asked Zip. Fine. Here's my story, said Zug. And everyone listened. Long ago, before I joined the Z-Stacks, I used to work in Heeland on the Flake Fleet. You see, before I was painted Z-Stack maroon red, I was painted navy blue with purple lining and a big snowflake on my stack. I didn't have a number, but I was the youngest member of my fleet, so I was the newest member at the time. I loved my old life. All the tugboats were very friendly. There were ocean-going tugs, harbour tugs, river tugs, everything. Now let me tell you about my friends. I'm friends with everyone. Well, nearly everyone, but I was close with most of them. Now Cassie, as I mentioned before, is a small switcher, just like you, Sunshine, only she had a lifeboat. Really? Said Sunshine. Anyone else? Asked Big Mac. Well, yes, there was 2 other switchers. Their names were Michael and Casey. Michael looked a little bit similar to you, 10 cents, and Casey, ironically enough, looks nearly identical to you, Zip. They were very close. They were best friends. They have a lot in common. They would basically talk to each other the most. There was also Luke, who's a river tug, who looks just like Sea Roach. However, Luke was a bit of a shy character. He was a bit timid and he gets nervous really easily. But we all respect him and we help him with his confidence. There was also James, an alligator tug like Billy Shoepack. Only he was dumber than me and Zip combined. Well, he was likable and he's a good friend to have, although he gets into a lot of accidents. There was also Joseph, another river tug, who is similar to you, Boomer, only he had long brown hair that covered his eyes. He never gets his hair cut, and we all call him a hippie for it, but he didn't care. He wore his long hair with pride. And finally there was Reese. Reese was another switcher like us. Well, most of us. He looked a bit similar to me, but slightly different. Reese was a bit sarcastic, a bit of a downer, but he does mean well. However, he did get in beef with the railway tug we had. His name was Matthew, and he and Reese had a big rivalry. There were other tugboats, like Robbie, Keelan, Jamie, Hannah, Jeffers, Hannah, Shay, Jack, Ben. The list goes on, basically. We had... Our fleet was... I had more tugboats in my old fleet than both the Stars and Z-Stacks combined, said Zug. Everyone was impressed. Well then, how did you end up here? Asked Zebedee. Let me finish. My old captain, Captain Flake, was a kind old man who loved his tugboats equally, although between you and me, I was his favourite. Because I always delivered my jobs on time and had a smile. My Zug, for a young tug, you are really useful and wise. Thank you, sir, I would always reply to him. Everything was perfect, said Zug. But there was one problem. What was that? Asked Zip. The other tugboat fleet. They were called the Fifth Fleet, which is quite poetic because they keep stealing our contracts. Heeland Harbour was a small harbour, but we had 2 tugboat fleets. Now the Fifth Fleet was a bit smaller than us, but they did have numbers, and they got more contracts. I remember a few of the members. The number 1 was a tug named Reynolds, who was a harbour tug. Reynolds was a schemer like you, Zoran, and he always comes up with the best schemes. He also had his mates including his girl, her name, Sweetheart, and also his best mate, Schemer, who was a river tug. They keep taking our contracts away, and soon enough, half the contracts were gone. So, and some of the tugs that Captain Fleet had ended up being stayed in their dock, while me, Michael, Casey, Joseph, Cassie, James, and Reese, and Luke did most of the jobs. I keep remembering some of the words what the others said, like Matthew, for example. "This is absurd," said Matthew. "Why am I kept in this harbour? Like, why am I kept in the docks? Like the pier?" "It's simple, really," said Keelan. "They're in better nick than us. And plus, smaller tugs cost less than bigger tugs. Captain Flake needs to keep his costs down." "Even so," said Matthew, "they could give us at least one job every now and again." "That'd be nice, man," said Ben. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be, as Captain Flake ordered every single tugboat to the Flake dock. "Now, my lovely tugboats," said Captain Flake, "I'm sure you all are dying to know what's happening." "Too right we are, man," said Jamie. "Some of us have not been used in years." "Yes," said Captain Flake, "I'm getting to that. I just want to apologize, you see, because the Thief Fleet keeps stealing most of our contracts, and keeping all of you around isn't going to be enough. So I'm afraid I have to sell some of you off to keep finances going." "But who will stay, sir?" I asked. "The tugboats who'll be staying on my fleet will be Cassie, Michael, Casey, Luke, Reese, James, Joseph, and Zug." I breathed a sigh of relief. At least I wasn't going, but I was worried for my friends. One tug, a harbour tug named Hannah, asked, why we're not going to stay, sir?" "Don't worry, I'll make sure you'll find good homes," said Captain Flake. Then he sighed and walked away. Soon people came to buy the tugboats. "This tugboat here," said a man who was pointing to Jamie, "needs some greasing and some patchwork, but otherwise he could be reused." Said a tall man with a top hat. "That railway tug will suit my harbour very well." So in the end, the tugs that were sold were Jack, Keelan, Robbie, Jamie, an ocean-going tug named Emily, Jeffers, Shay, Hannah, John, and Billy, leaving me and the ones I mentioned before behind. After they left, everything seemed alright at first. The Thief Fleet decided to relocate to another harbour. At first, I thought we won, but unfortunately, the reason why they left was because Heeland Harbour was going through a decline. You see, there was another harbour nearby Heeland, and many people moved there because it was bigger. Captain Flake had no choice but to make our tugboat fleet a delivery fleet. He said he's doing it just to keep us in business. Although, if you would have asked Reese, it would have been a different story. "We're finished, you see," Reese said. "Captain Flake is making us be a delivery fleet. Not to mention we have to deal with him." He pointed to the barge dock. We're all gonna die," said James. "We're gonna go bankrupt, and we might end up in Hurricane Hair." "Burke and Blair, you mean?" asked Luke. "That's what I said," said James. "Calm down," said Michael. "We'll surely figure something. Captain Flake is doing his best." "Yeah, I agree," said Casey. I'm sure we'll get through it." Cassie looked at me and said, "Are you right, Zug?" Yeah, I'm fine. Except I have to deal with him tomorrow. We all looked at the barge area. Oh yeah, you'll be dealing with Seaweed, said Reese. Good luck with him, bro. Who was Seaweed? asked Zip. Seaweed was an old barge. He was a troublesome thing and loves to cause trouble. So, the next day I was tasked to take him. Seaweed grumbled as always at first. Ugh, why am I going with this stupid tugboat? He said. I want to stay in my dock. No excuses, I said. Come on, we gotta go upriver. When we arrived, we headed back down to Heeland with the big delivery. Seaweed had an evil idea. This is what you get, Pipsqueak, said Seaweed, and he bumped me, and I was out of control. Whoa! I cried. Somebody help me! But of course, no one could help me. The waves were crashing down, and soon enough, I crashed into rocks. It scraped my hull, and luckily I landed in a sand beach. Seaweed laughed maniacally. Joseph, who was passing by, saw me and was like, Zug, don't worry, bro. I'll go get help, he said. Soon, Joseph arrived with a floating crane and took me to the repair shop. Everyone saw me. Oh my god, they said. I arrived at the workshop. I stayed there for days. Captain Flake couldn't afford to fix me. Then, one day he came up to me. Are you okay, Zug? He asked. I'm fine, sir. I'm so sorry what happened. It wasn't... Zug, it wasn't your fault. Seaweed was a terrible, evil barge. I sold them for scrap. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to repair you. You're not going to scrap me, are you, sir? Of course not, Zug. I assure you you'll be repaired. I smiled. Thank you, sir. However, you won't be on my fleet anymore. Sir, you don't mean... I'm sorry, Zug. I was sold to Captain Zero. The only reason I was sold because of my name. When I was at the workshop, my fleet logo was removed and I was repainted Z-Stack colors. My old friends were there to see me off. I'll miss you guys, I said. We'll miss you too, bro, said Michael. We'll keep in touch, said Casey. I'll keep writing letters to you, said Cassie. Even Reese was upset. And after that, I left, never to return to Heeland again. After that, all the stars and Zeds were stunned. Conrad, said Zill, that's a very sad story. Thanks, said Zug. Cassie told me that Captain Fleek had to file for bankruptcy, and soon they're going to be closed, and I don't know what will become of them. Then Zug went away and go to sleep. Everyone was upset, including Zip. The next morning, Zip stayed up behind and asked Captain Zero something. Sir, asked Zip. What is it, Zip? Said Captain Zero. I was wondering, sir. And after Zip told Captain Zero Zug's story, he said, I'll think about it. A few days later, Captain Zero told Zug to go to upriver for a while. Later that evening, Zug came back and he was surprised to see what he saw. There was all of his old friends, Michael, Casey, Cassie, Luke, Reese, James and Joseph, but they were all painted in the Z-Stack colours and their names were changed. Michael became Zedko, Casey became Zacy, Cassie became Zassy, Joseph became Zoseph, Luke became Zook, James became Zames, and Reese became Zeems. Guys, said Zug, is it really you? Of course, mate, it's us, said Michael. How you been, bro? How you been, chap? Said Joseph, now called Zoseph. Oh my god, it's a miracle. Who bought you guys? Your captain did, said Casey, now called Zacy. He's a really nice man, kinda. Captain Flake was over the moon to sold us. Don't know why we had to be renamed, said Reese, now called Zeus. You'll get used to it, said Zug. It's all because of Zip, said Captain Zero. If it wasn't for him convincing me to buy your old friends, and his end of the bargain, he has to do dreading work for 5 weeks. You did it, Zip, for me? Of course, Zug, said Zip. I'm your best mate. I want what's best for you. And that made Zug happy. Zug is very grateful to see his old friends again. Now they are safe and he gets to see them again. Now Zug's new friends will have a hard time fitting into the Zed Stacks, but I'm sure they will fit in eventually. I really hope you enjoyed the special because there are more stories about them. The end.